Hello and welcome to this first look at Adobe XD for designing interfaces. In this video we're going to be putting together this EDM design. It's a marketing email. It's a single page design. It's a pretty simple single column collection of assets, but it'll help us get familiar with XD as a tool and get us on the way to designing our own material for screens. Let's just have a quick look at that. Single column, as I said, a logo, some typography, a couple of kind of button elements, and a couple of images. So let's get ahead and build this email design. So what actually is XD? It's an Adobe tool, and it's been specifically designed for or developed for designing for screens. So in XD we are designing the user experience for digital products, sort of much in the same way as InDesign is developed for the user experience of kind of print products. With XD we can establish the look and feel of screen designs and how content is delivered to our audiences. XD is a kind of a rapid prototyping tool. We can, along with the look and feel, we can also design interactivity, and we can also kind of preview and test our work, our prototypes in the app itself. So let's go ahead, I reckon, and we'll just start making this design, and through that process we'll learn about the interface and how we use the tool. So I might go ahead and make a new document. So there's some kind of familiar things, familiar kind of interface elements that you'll probably come across in XD, that you've come across in other apps, other Adobe apps, but there's also some new stuff. This is the welcome screen, and we can open up kind of recent files, and we've got a couple of presets to choose from. I'm going to start with the custom size. I'm going to make up my own kind of screen ratio to work with. So this is an empty project, and I'm going to use the Artboard tool to get started in this project. So I'll click on the Artboard tool. You can see there's heaps of presets to choose from kind of familiar devices, but I'm just going to click and drag in this space here and just have a look what I've created there. You can see we've created Artboard number 1, and I can change that name. I might do that now. This is going to be an email design, so I'm going to call it EDM. And we've got some properties over here to the right hand side. This is our properties panel. Whatever's selected will get property values in this right hand side. Currently I've got an artboard selected. Switch over to the artboard, to the pointer tool there. Our artboard is currently this value, but I'm going to make it 1200 wide, and maybe I'll start with 1000 deep. Excellent. So we can navigate around our screen using familiar shortcuts. So the spacebar to kind of slide we get the hand tool, we can slide our artwork around, and the command plus and minus to zoom in. We've currently created this canvas this is the kind of the origin, the middle of our artboard, and if I zoom out, oh, sorry, not our artboard, but our kind of project space. You can see we've got a lot of room around that first artboard. I might just put it right in the middle and set it to 0x and 0y. So we can create, one of the great things about XD is that we can create heaps of different artboards and work on many different screens at the one time. If I just go back to the Artboard tool there, you can see I could scroll through these presets and add an iPhone or maybe an iPad and some desktop sizes as well as all the kind of any size that we want to create, kind of just by clicking and dragging, and you can see we could be working on all of that at the one time. I'll just undo that, go back to our single artboard. And so this is the kind of thing that you would, it's a design that you'd come across in an email client like Outlook or Google or Apple Mail. All right, I might set up a few things, and as designers we like to work with a grid, so I think that might be a good place to start to kind of structure our design. Let's just check out with our artboard name selected there. In the properties here we can assign a grid, so let's just turn that on. So there's a couple of types of grids. We can have just a normal square grid, but we can have a kind of a layout grid with columns. So kind of would be familiar with setting up a column grid in InDesign. This is a very simple email, so I'm going to work with 2 columns in the email, and we'll just set up some margins to help us space things out. So change the columns to 2. So we've got 2 columns, and you can see the columns in that kind of blue color, aqua color, and we're going to set a gutter width of 20 in the middle there. That's our gutter, and then our column width is going to be 290 with margins left and right of 300. Oops, we'll just see if we can wrangle that to what we want, and this is what I'm after. 2 columns with a gutter of 20. Our columns either side are going to be 290 with 300 margin each side, and that's going to mean that our width of our 2 columns there is 600, and that's kind of the standard width of an email. If you go and have a look at the junk mail in your inbox, you generally find that those emails are designed at 600 wide. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to give the background of my design a new fill color. So again, in the properties just above the grid, I can change that to whatever I need, and I'm using a kind of a gray in the background, and I'm using hexadecimal values, 858585. It's going to give us that gray in the background. That's what we need. I'm going to go ahead and save this project. Under File, we've got a couple of options there, and XD likes to try and save your documents to the cloud, and you can do that if you like, but for this document I'm going to save it to my desktop, save as local document, and we'll just call it EDM, drop it onto my my desktop. It's just asking me to access my desktop folder. I mustn't have done that before. So we've got our file saved, got a few things, a few kind of background things set up. I think it's about time that we started to add some content, or some graphics really. We're going to do that by adding some shapes and adjust the properties of those shapes. So our design had a kind of a central area with kind of a white background. So I've just grabbed our rectangle tool and clicked and dragged that over our columns. And you will have noticed when you did that that XD has some really nice snapping functions, and we've been able to kind of make a pretty accurate 600 pixel box. And you know, we can go back over to our transform panel here in the properties and access the properties of that particular box that I've just made on the desktop there. We can have a look at its height and width, make that, you know, exact figures if we want, and I'm going to change the distance from the top of the design in actual pixels. So try and make things kind of pixel perfect if we can. We'll be changing the depth of that element shortly when we start getting a bit more content in there. Okay, might actually drag that up a bit higher, and we'll make this our header element. So maybe about 200 or 250. That's looking good, and we're going to give that a green color. And the green that I'm using, you can use any color that you want. The green that I'm using here, and we'll change that fill property, is 79C142. There we go, there's our green color there. So you can see there that we've got some kind of corner toggles that we can make pill shapes, which is kind of really handy. We can do that numerically, or we can do it just with those little handles. You can see in our appearance above fill here, we can either change all of those corners together, like so, or we could do them independently. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to make the top two about 20 or so, and the bottom two 0. So now we've got kind of corners at the top, but not at the bottom. So that's going to be our header. Let's make another shape on the canvas, and once you do that, you can see that, or you can feel that that will snap nicely and you know, butt up really well against those other shapes that we've made. One thing I've forgotten to do with my header there is uncheck the border. So I've taken the border off there, and you can see I've got a grey border around, a default grey border around this white panel as well. I'll take that off. That's looking how I suppose we envisaged. And again, let's add some corners to the bottoms of those panels. I'm thinking about turning off my guides just for a bit, and I can do that by coming over to clicking on my Artboard title there and unchecking the guide, and that will hide it for a while. And we can also use a keyboard shortcut, which is Command Shift and apostrophe, to turn that on and off, just to do that a little bit quicker. Okay, moving along. Let's add an image to our design. We'll start with the logo. We can go File, and we can import an image, and I've got an SVG on my desktop. I'll give you the link to that, of the logo that I'm using for my client, Natural Skin Care. I'm going to click and import that, and oops, you can see that it has placed it there on the desktop, sorry, on my canvas. And because that's an SVG, I can scale that and position that. You'll see that when I move an object around, it gives me some pretty good indications of where you know, the center is, and allows me to kind of help balance position of stuff. I think I might make that a little shallower, so maybe about 210. That'll do. It's looking good. Snap that back up there. All right, nice one. I think it's time to add some text to our design, and we'll use the text tool to do that. And you can make point text, and you can make text in text boxes. I'm going to come right to the center here, and this is going to be my main heading, I suppose. I'm just going to say welcome and select that text. Over on our properties here, we've got some transform properties, but scrolling a bit down here, we can set some type. We'll center it, I suppose. That'll be helpful. And just go ahead and reposition that in the center. And I'm using, I don't know, I'm gonna have a go at, I'm going to use Museo Sans, and I think I've got a few weights there. Start with a thinner kind of font, 300, and we'll make it a bit bigger. So you can use some of the kind of typographic keyboard shortcuts from Adobe. I'm holding Shift and Command down and hitting the comma or period keys, or you can just do that numerically. Adding in maybe 68. Just positioning that in the center. We'll give that a color, and you know what, we can use the color picker, and we can even add that color that we've used there into our swatches so that we can access it again next time, which is kind of handy. Might do that with my white color there, add that in there, adding that green and that white a fair bit. My design had another graphic element underneath the welcome, which was just a rule. So maybe we'll use this, the rule element, and I'm going to turn my guides on. Not that I didn't really need the guides there. I'll just draw out a line, and I can change the size of that. Maybe 6. And if I click on my little swatch there, I can access that green color. And I can go ahead and position that perfectly in the center. All right, now I've got a little bit more text. I'm going to add some text in a text box this time around, and I'm going to click and drag, and you can see how XD has some really great functionality for aligning stuff, and it's snapped that text box to the width of the of that line that I've made, which is kind of good. So I'm just going to type in some text here. And reset that something smaller. And different weight, I think. Make that heavy. And also set that as a all caps, which is cool. So this is my kind of welcome to my reader. I've also got some kind of body copy that I'm just going to copy and paste here. You can grab that from wherever you want. Maybe a dummy copy website, grab some Laura Ipsum from online. And I'm going to set that as just standard text, and I'm going to set it in a kind of a grey colour. Maybe that'll be my grey text colour. It's going to be a bit smaller, in fact considerably smaller. Oops, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. Setting the actual type size there. And oops. This is actually my line spacing, which I'll make 24 for my body copy there. Don't want it to be set in caps. I'll make it 18, just a little bit bigger. All right, Ripper. We're starting to get somewhere with our design. Got some typography and some graphics in place. I was going to show you how you can make some character styles, which I think is kind of interesting and useful. So to make a character style, if you have got quite a bit of typography to set and you want to establish what your heading and copy styles are so that you can go through and quickly set text, we need to have our document assets tab open, and there's a little icon bottom left here that opens up your document assets, and there's various types of assets that we'll explore those as we go along. Character styles is one of those assets that we can create. So if I wanted to sort of designate this bit of text as a character style, I just need to select it and then click on that little plus sign and double click it there and give it a name. I'm going to call it heading 1, and that has been designated heading 1. I'll do the same thing with my copy here. I'll select my copy and call that copy. And so now we've assigned two characters, two character styles, and if I go ahead and then, I don't know, just make some more copy like this copy here, and I want to make that heading 1, I can just select it and go and assign that that heading, which is very useful when you've got lots of typography that you're working on. So there's a few buttons in our design. Let's go ahead and make those buttons. And I'm going to make one, turn it into a component, and then reuse that throughout the rest of the design. The buttons consisted of a kind of a rectangle. They were full width buttons, so something like this. They didn't have a border, and they were set in that green. They were pill shaped, so I'll just drag in that. Dragging those corners, and they had some text in them as well, so just write some text and typing in a little bit of text like so. I'm going to make it bold, and I've typed it all caps already, but I'll make it a little bit bigger. And we'll set it in white so that it's, I could have just clicked white there like that. And we'll just position that so that it's in the center. That looks all right. Now, if I grab both of those elements so I can select the pill-shaped box and hold shift down and grab the type as well. I'm going to come over here and I'll just click the plus button, and that'll add that to my components. It's something that we can reuse. I'm going to call it, double click on that and call it button. So then if I want to add more, I can just drag them out of my components pane, which is pretty handy. See, when I move I'm just holding shift down and I'm dragging that around, you can see that XD is looking for appropriate kind of spacing for me to use, which is really handy. Makes things a lot quicker. I'm going to need to give myself a little bit more depth, so if I select my artboard, I'll get this toggle handle so that I can just drag, and that's going to change the height or the depth of my document, and my artwork's going to go a little bit deeper. My design includes an image as well, a bitmap image, something photographic. So I'm going to add something that I've got from Unsplash or Pexels or somewhere. I've got that on the desktop, but what I want to do is create a shape for that, or like a kind of a picture box. So I'm going to drag out a box onto my artboard. Kind of make sure, position that, and kind of resize it, space it out as I require. Going to lose the border. Doesn't matter. I'll keep the fill. And so a different way there's our design. I might just hide that. Another way of adding images apart from the import function is just dragging and dropping them straight into your document. So I've got this shape here and an image that I can just drag straight from my desktop. I can even do that straight out of a browser window into that picture box, and it'll kind of crop it appropriately, which is really quick and handy. So yeah, moving along, I think we need to position a little bit more text, and I think we're kind of pretty close to completing this pretty simple EDM design. I might just copy this text. I need a little bit more text to flesh this out. So I'll click Option and drag, Shift and drag, like you can in a lot of other apps, to duplicate that. And in that text box, I'm going to just copy that text, hit return, and paste a little bit more text in there, just to give it a bit more copy in that space. I'll just make sure that that second heading, just modify text in here. Just to fill that out a little bit, which is looking good. If I decide I ever want to change the typographic styles along the way, I can go back into my character styles and just make a few updates. If I right click on the character style in the document assets window, I can go and edit it, and there's a few things that I can change. Like if I wanted the size to be bigger, I could do so. If I wanted to have a bit more line spacing, I could also adjust that as well, which is kind of good. Helps us to sort of quickly update things. I am going to need to adjust some of the spacing now that I've done that, but that's cool. Down the bottom here, over here, I want another button, so I'm going to drag that out of the components and you can see that pretty easy to reuse items in XD. If I can change that I can change that instance of that button. Which is good, so I can, update where necessary. And similarly, if I want to make updates to those components, I can right-click on the components and edit that main component and go into it and make edits. If I wanted that to be grey or something, I could do that, and it would update all of those components in the design, which is handy. I will just undo that though. So just to finish off, couple more assets or additions. I need some more text to be at the bottom of that footer, or to create like some kind of footer element. So I've got some text for that, a bit of an address and whatnot. Let's turn on my borders so I can paste that into a text box. I'll set that in white. It's looking good in white. Center justified, everything's center justified. 24 pixels high. We might just update the line spacing so that it's got a bit more space, and we might fill that out a little bit more. Down the bottom, I want to create an unsubscribe button, so I'm going to drag out another component, but we can edit that so that it's got some variation. I'll even change the size of it. I'm holding Option down there, and that will allow me to kind of change the size of that from the center, which is handy. All right, pretty sure that's reasonably close to what I envisaged from the start. Maybe slightly different, but yeah, good enough to move on with. And just to recap, what we've looked at there is we're starting to get familiar with the our workspace, with our XD workspace, navigating around the workspace, looking at our properties. We've added some different content types, added a couple of images, and we've made some content using these kind of vector tools, these shape tools. We've also added some text. Added a bit of text. We've styled our text using the property character properties. We've created some character styles and also some components, which is really good for that kind of reuse and that quick kind of workflow. So we've finished our design, and we're going to want to share our design now. And another great aspect to XD is the kind of collaborative and sharing tools built in. Across the top here, there's the design and share tabs. We're going to go over to the share tab, and under the share tab, we've got the ability to create a link. So XD can use the Adobe Creative Cloud to generate a live link, and I'm going to do that now. So it's created a live link for me. Didn't take too long, although you might have to wait for a minute. And so this is it for a design review. So if I wanted to send my client my work, I could send them, more of a a pixel perfect, usable version of my design, rather than just like a JPEG or a PNG. So I've created that link. You can see that there's that link there. I can actually embed that code if I wanted to. If I had some sort of development platform to show my clients stuff, I could do that. But I can just copy and paste that link. Yeah, copy and paste it there, and then it's just opened up on my other screen. And then take that link, send that to my client or someone that I'm collaborating with. They'll be able to see that work, and if they've got an Adobe Cloud account too, they can add markup and comments about the design, which is really helpful if you're working in teams or working with your client. So that link there, easy to share your work, and yeah, get feedback, I suppose. Okay, so that's our first look at Adobe XD, a great tool for quickly prototyping and designing content for screens.